Hello and welcome to your 25-minute yoga flow for tight hips. We're going to begin in a comfortable seated position, grounding down through both sit bones, finding length through the spine, crown of head reaches tall, and just begin to notice your inhales and your exhales. Breathing only through the nose. Taking a big inhale, filling the belly up with air, and then exhale. Continue a few more breaths on your own. And when you're ready, make your way to child's pose. Knees spread out wide, big toes touch, and just sink in. Feel the stretch through the lower back and the hips, connecting with your breath. Gently come out of child's pose, walk your hands back towards your knees, and come up to a seated position on your shins, taking a gentle twist to the right. So left hand to your right knee, gaze over the right shoulder. Each inhale finding length through the spine, and each exhale twisting a little deeper. Take it to the other side, so right hand to the left knee, gaze over the left shoulder. And make your way to your hands and knees for a tabletop. When you get there, take a second to check in with your alignment, shoulders stacked over wrist, hips over knees, and begin to take a few rounds of cat-cow. On your inhale, chest sinks towards the mat, gaze and tailbone lift. Exhale, press the mat away from you, rounding the spine. Maybe finding a few movements side to side, wagging out the tail, shifting your hips forward and back. Whatever movements are calling to you today. Come back to a neutral spine. Take your left foot and extend it out to the side, sinking your hips back towards your heels for a one-legged child's pose variation. Feeling the stretch through the hips, the lower back. And then come up onto your knee. Bring your left hand to your left leg, reaching the right hand up and over your head for a side body stretch. Right hand plants on the floor, left hand reaches up and over, getting an opposite side body stretch. And then make your way back to that one-legged child's pose variation. Rock back up to your tabletop position. Right foot extends out to the right side. Shift your hips back towards your heels for that one-legged child's pose. And then come up onto your knee, right hand to your right leg, left hand sweeps up and overhead, getting a side body stretch. And then left hand to the floor, right hand sweeps up and overhead, getting an opposite side body stretch. And then make your way back down to that one-legged child's pose. Rock yourself back up to your hands and knees. Lift your hips for downward facing dog. Begin to pedal out the feet, working through the hamstrings and stretching out the backs of the legs. Step your feet forward to the top of the mat, forward folds. Inhale, hands to shins, lift up to a flat back. And then exhale, fold. Plant your hands on the mat and right foot steps back. Drop your right knee And then sink into this low lunge, either keeping your fingertips down for balance or lifting your hands up towards the ceiling. Bring your left knee back, lower knees, chest, and chin, pranam. Slide your hips down and lift your chest for baby cobra. Shift your hips back towards your heels and then lift your hips and tailbone high for downward dog. Right foot steps forward between your hands, drop your left knee, sink into this low lunge, either keeping your fingertips grounded or lifting both hands up towards the ceiling, finding a slight back bend here. Hands come down to the mat, lift the back knee, and step your left foot forward to meet your right, forward fold. Inhale, rise up to a flat back, and exhale, fold. Plant your hands on the mat, left foot steps back, dropping your left knee, and then sink into your low lunge, again, keeping your fingertips grounded or lifting your hands up, finding a slight back bend. Hands plant, bring your right knee back to meet your left, lower knees, chest, and chin, pranam. Slide your hips down, lift your chest up for baby cobra. Lower down, shift your hips back towards your heels, and then lift your hips and tailbone high for downward facing dog. Left foot steps forward between your hands, drop your right knee, sink into this low lunge. Option to lift both hands up, finding that slight back bend. And then hands plant on the mat, come off of your right knee and step your right foot forward to meet your left, forward fold. Step your feet to the back of the mat, coming into high plank. Bend your elbows and lower through chaturanga and inhale to upward facing dog. Tuck your toes and send your hips and tailbone high for downward facing dog. Right leg lifts for 3-limb downward dog. Bend the knee, roll the hip open, and then begin to draw circles with your knee in one direction, and then switching directions of your circles, loosening up the hip joint. Come back through your 3-limb downward dog and then step your right foot forward in between your hands. Come onto your knee and then shift your hips back and straighten out your right leg, coming into quarter splits. Inhale back up to your low lunge. Option to lift your hands, finding that slight back bend, and then hands come down, frame the foot, straighten your right leg and shift your hips back for quarter splits. Flow through a few more of these on your own, waking up the right hamstring and the left hip flexor. Next time you're in your low lunge, stay there, come off your left knee and step back to a high plank. Roll your heels to the right and lift up into a side plank. Drop your bottom knee for a supported side plank. And then reach around, see if you can grab your foot, kicking your foot into your hand, getting a quad stretch and a hip flexor stretch here. Gently release your foot without slingshotting it, coming back to tabletop. Lift your hips, downward dog. Inhale, left leg lifts for 3-limb downward dog. Bend the knee, roll the hip open, and begin to draw those circles with your knee in one direction, and then switching directions of your circles. Loosening up the hip joint here. Come back to your 3-limb downward dog and step your left foot forward between your hands. Drop your back knee, sinking forward into your low lunge, and then straightening out that left leg, shifting your hips back towards your heels for quarter splits. Inhale, low lunge. Option to lift both hands up towards the ceiling. Exhale, hands frame the foot, straighten that left leg, shift your hips back towards your heels. Working into that left hamstring and that right hip flexor, flowing through a few more of these on your own. Next time you're forward in your low lunge, stay there, come off that back knee and step back into a high plank. Roll your heels to the left, lifting into side plank. Lower that bottom knee, coming into supported side plank. Lift your top leg, catch the inner edge of your foot, and kick your foot into your hand, getting a quad and hip flexor stretch here. Gently release it without slingshotting it and make your way back to tabletop. Lift your hips high, downward dog. Lift your right leg for 3-limb downward dog. Bend the knee, roll your hip open, and just hang here, feeling that hip flexor stretch. Straighten out your legs, squaring off your hips, come back to your 3-limb, and then step your right foot forward between your hands. Straighten your right leg, shifting into pyramid pose. Bend the right knee, coming back into a high lunge, pressing your hips down, and then shift your hips back, straighten your front leg for pyramid. Flowing through a few more of these at your own pace. Step your left foot forward and cross it behind your right foot, coming into this crisscross forward folds. Carefully sit down on the mat, stacking your right knee over your left for cow-faced legs. You should feel a deep stretch in the hips here. And plant your right hand down, sweep your left hand up and overhead for a side stretch. Good. Come back up through center, take it to the other side, left hand down, right hand up and overhead. Come back up through center, and then begin to walk your hands over to the left, unwinding your legs. And then lift your hips high, coming into a forward fold, facing the back of the mat. Bring your heels in and toes out. Sink your hips down into yogi squats. Feet come parallel, hands plant. Lift your hips, forward folds. Toes out, heels in. Sink your hips back down to yogi squat. Feet parallel, hands plant, coming back to forward folds. Carefully walk yourself back out into downward dog, adjusting the position of your hands and feet. Left leg lifts for 3-limb downward dog, and then bend your knee, roll the hip open, just letting the foot hang, feeling that hip flexor stretch. Step your left foot forward in between your hands, and then straighten out the left leg, coming into pyramid. Bend into the left knee, pressing both hips down into your lunge, and then straightening your leg, shifting into pyramid. Cycle through a few of these on your own. And then step your right foot forward, crossing it behind the left for a crisscross leg forward folds. Carefully sit down on the mat, crossing your left knee over the right for cow face legs. Feeling a deep hip stretch here, and then plant your left hand down, right hand sweeps up and overhead for a side body stretch. Come back up through center, plant your right hand down, left hand sweeps up and overhead, getting an opposite side body stretch here. Come back up through center, and walk your hands over to the right side, unwinding your legs, lifting your hips high, coming into a forward fold facing the front of the mat. Heels in, toes out, sinking your hips down to your yogi squat, lengthen through the spine here. And then feet parallel, lift your hips high for a forward fold. Heels in, toes out, sinking down to yogi squats. And then plant your hands, feet parallel, lifting back to your forward folds. Carefully walk yourself back out to your downward facing dog, adjusting the position of your hands and feet. Step both feet forward to the top of the mat, finding a forward fold. Inhale, lift up to a flat back. Exhale, folding in. Slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, rise up to a standing position. Lift your right knee up towards your chest, flexing the foot, and then cross your right ankle over your left thigh. Hands come to heart center as you sink down into this one-legged chair pose. Option to stay here or plant your fingertips down on the mat, finding a forward fold. You should feel a deep stretch here in the outer right hip. Slowly and with control, rise back up to standing, and then cross your right foot over your left, coming back into a crisscross leg forward folds. Walk your hands to the left, unwinding your legs, coming into a forward fold facing the back of the mat. Walk yourself out into a downward facing dog, adjusting the position of your hands and feet as necessary. Step both feet forward to the top of the mat, finding a forward fold. And then inhale, hands come to your shins, lift to a flat back. Exhale, fold in. Slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, rise up to standing. Lift your left knee up towards your chest, foot is flexed. And then cross your left ankle over your right thigh, sinking down into this one-legged chair pose, feeling a deep stretch in the outer left hip. Option to stay here or fold forward, fingertips to the mat, getting a deeper stretch. Slowly and with control, rise back up to standing and cross your left foot over your right, folding over your legs here. Unwind, coming into a forward fold facing the front of the mat again, and then walk yourself back out to downward dog. Drop onto your knees and shift your hips back towards your heels, coming into child's pose. Letting your head and neck hang heavy here, taking a little break. And we're going to set up for frog pose. So face the long edge of your mat, spread your knees out wide, and I like to roll up the corners of my mat for a little extra cushion on my knees. So knees and feet are spread out wide. If this is a deep enough stretch for your inner hips, you can stay up on your hands, or option to come down to the forearms here. Maybe you hold here, finding stillness. Maybe you rock a little bit forward and back, finding some mobility in the inner hips. Breathe. Slowly come out of it. If you were on your forearms, come back up to the palms of your hands. Draw your knees together. If your mat was folded up, go ahead and unfold it. And make your way to a seated position with the soles of your feet together for butterfly. When you get there, begin to pulse your knees up and down, finding a little mobility in the hips. And then when you're ready, fold forward over your legs, trying to keep a flat back here. The closer your feet are towards you, the deeper of a stretch that you'll feel. So if it's too intense, just walk your feet away from you a little bit. Slowly rise back up to a neutral spine. Face the short edge of your mat, plant your feet, bend your knees, and slowly lower to your back. When you get there, we're going to find happy baby. So bend your knees, reach your hands in between your legs, wrap your first two fingers around your big toe, and just settle into this pose, maybe rocking a little bit side to side, feeling a good stretch in the inner hips here. Release your feet back down to the mat and then cross your right ankle over your left thigh, coming into supine pigeon. Option to interlace your fingers behind your left thigh, pulling your legs in closer to your body. Breathing here. Release your hands and drop your left foot back down to the mat and just let your legs fall towards the left in the shape that they're in. Right arm is extended out to the side, gaze over the right fingertips. Breathing into this twist. Legs come back through center, uncross your right leg, and then cross your left ankle over your right thigh. Option to interlace your fingers behind your right thigh, pulling your legs in closer towards your body, getting a deeper stretch. Undo your hands, drop your right foot back to the mat, and then let your knees fall to the right in the shape that they're in. Left arm is extended out to the side, gaze is over the left fingertips, relaxing into this twist. Bring your legs back through center, both feet plant on the mat. Bring the soles of your feet together, knees out wide for a reclined butterfly pose. Bring one hand to the belly and one hand to the heart. And begin to settle into the mat for Shavasana. Letting go of any breathing effort, any muscular effort, and take a moment to scan your body from the crown of your head, your shoulders, chest, hips, to feet, taking note of any areas in the body still holding on to tension and inviting that tension to release. Relax here for the next few moments, and I'll let you know when it's time to come out of it. Draw your knees back together, gently rolling onto your favorite side, and carefully make your way back up to a comfortable seated position. Grounding down through the hips, lengthening through the spine. Bring your palms together at heart center, bowing your head in gratitude. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I hope your hips feel better than they did at the beginning of class, and I'll see you again on the next video. Namaste.